Hey, welcome to the Inside Integration Podcast. My name is Chris, and I am joined by my partner Jason. And welcome to our show.
Greetings and salutations, ladies and gentlemen.
So Jason, we were just talking offline before we got on here. We both kind of went through a pretty full day of meetings and just going from one thing to the next to the next, and we're at the end of this day. So I'm apologizing in advance if just seems like we're heavily sedated and just not into it.
Well, it's okay to feel like a little bit like you've been in a pinball machine because people are listening to this at any time of day. It could be on an airplane ride, it could be with some windshield time. So the good news is that nobody can see that you are, your tongue is dragging and your shoes are smoking because you've been dragging your feet around all day behind your desk or you know whatever ailment you're suffering. Energy is always one of those mysterious things in the world that sometimes you can rise to the occasion and other times you can't. But today we decided to make a mission to rise to the occasion. And when we listen back to this later, if we need to chop it up and throw it in the river, we will, and it will never see the light of day. But uh, if we can soldier on and we can muster up the energy here, we do have some cool things to share this week with
There's an
everybody.
episode of Parks and Rec. I don't know how often you've seen that show, where basically the whole premise is that Ron Swanson never wants to have any meetings, so his secretary always schedules meetings for like March 31st or a date that doesn't actually exist in reality, or that she doesn't think exists in reality. And then March 31st comes around and he's got 650 meetings, in that one day. It's kind of like how today felt like, oh yeah, no problem. We can last Monday, yeah, we got it. We'll just pack it into the schedule somewhere. So yeah, it's just been
Yeah, I think that dovetails into what we were talking about, kind of with our function and how we fit into people's time management. It's everybody's out there waving their shiny object in your eye face, right? Like, hey, look at me, I've got something for you. Like, hey, and we get a lot of that. So trying to filter through that and be of service, be of value, be a button that you click on, or oh hey, I actually should interact with this. And part of what we were talking about was how to explain what a sales rep company does, what our function is, what ideally what we should be doing versus your perception of what we're doing versus maybe what the vendor's perception is, right? I think there's a delta between all three of those things. And how does a rep or how does a sales company show a value? And I think we can take our company hats off here for a minute and just talk about it in broad strokes. As a former integrator, former business owner that had lots of people waving things in my face at one point in the time, um, it can be a lot, and I always try to look for the folks that were out to serve my business in the best way possible. So whether that's, hey, I need to talk to this vendor that I'm really hot on to maybe get some marketing funds, or hey, I sell a lot of this product. I'm a small guy, but I'm on my way to be a big guy. What do I have to do to have a direct relationship? And I think those are a couple of the stepping stones or gateways, if you will, for integrators out there to make those moves, to make that step. And again, whether that's a step up from the farm leagues, or whether that's the, hey, I'm in the bigs. How do I maximize this opportunity? How do I leverage all of the big things that I'm doing as a big dog on the block to best benefit not only my company, but to promote those relationships with these key vendors, right?
and it's funny because it's a little bit of a misnomer, right? So we're reps, and it's kind of assumed that we represent manufacturers, which we certainly do. But the best of us and the best reps out there are kind of doing that on a two-way basis, right? Like, you're out there, you're advocating for your dealers because you're the first line of defense. You're their guy to help them out, and we spend a lot of time just kind of trying to push that ball forward on behalf of a lot of our dealers, especially, the smaller guys and the guys who might not get that kind of attention.
Yeah, reps get it coming and going. I never in my days as an integrator and working for a vendor, working for a manufacturer, man, oh, the rep, oh my God, that guy's gonna get all of it, or or that gal. Man,
Right.
let's not discount some
We're
of the
progressive. Sure.
hardworking ladies out there, and some of the best in the game. So no, no, this is not gender specific by any stretch of the imagination. But man, if there was somebody to give both barrels to about a problem, especially if you're hot,
Yep.
you know,
It's the person who's right there in front of you. Doesn't
one
matter if
hundred
they're buying you
percent.
lunch. Doesn't matter if they're talking about how amazing your showroom is. Like, no,
Nah,
you're going to get it because you're literally in front of me. And
right? Yeah,
it's part of what we do.
trying to be those solution people, and trying to surround yourself with successful people. I think I heard an average of the individuals are the average of the 10 people that they spend the most time with, right? So you're going to find somewhere to kind of slot into that middle. Obviously, you've got your alpha outliers, and then you've got your people that are just you know not not out to take on the day, or they're
Right.
they're outside of that 10 subset. We'll just put it that way, right? There's I think again there's proof to that saying. So again, trying to work in as reps where we can to support you guys, to support your business, and to look for those solutions that not only benefit you, your end users, but let's talk about it in terms of dollar bills. That's a
Yeah.
partnership that makes everybody money, and that's one that everybody can get behind. It's sort of like I try to draw the analysis, because not everybody's a gambler, but if you ever go to a casino, you can tell the people that are having the most fun, right? It's the guys that are on the craps table, because they're all in it together, right? If you're on the craps table, you're betting with the other guys. Maybe they're betting with you. You got the guys that are running the game. Everybody's putting chips down, and you all want that money to either come up on the number you got, or if you're just starting out, you want to come up with a 7, or you want to come with 11. And everybody's winning. I think
Right.
you know you know craps obviously has some negative associations and connotations, right? No, nobody wants to hit snake eyes. You don't want to be that guy. But I think the analogy for everybody's in it together, is kind of how we approach this. Certainly at Oliver Marketing, I know for yourself and myself as our personal brands, right?
Yeah. And I mean, coming from that angle, I got hired at Oliver Marketing as a sales engineer, which, like, by definition, it's helping dealers. And part of the reason that I got hired, and one of the things that I kind of asserted all along, is like, I don't want to do sales. I'm not a sales guy. I've never been really particularly good at sales, but what I am pretty good at is solving problems, walking dealers through stuff, having that kind of experience that's, hopefully helpful in that case, right? Like, I can always kind of point to, okay, don't screw up the way that I've screwed up 10 times before. Like, here, this is how I learned how to do it. This is how you do it. And, that's one of the things where, I used to get phone calls from technicians who were, in a basement, 6 o'clock at night. There's nobody from the company who's answering a phone, especially out here on the West Coast, where a lot of times East Coast based companies' tech support times, are,
Wow,
yeah, I don't.
easy for you to say, man.
After today, like, literally, I'm al dente right now. I
Yeah,
just got out
I
of
get it.
totally
Yep.
swamped. But that's part of what we do, right? I got brought on board. We used to be the Savant reps, so obviously there's, with any kind of control system, there's opportunities to help dealers in that way. But now it's kind of pivoted into, hey, we represent this line, and I noticed that you do a lot of this. I think that this can help you achieve that, and trying to put those connections together. I know, Jason, you kind of do the same thing up in the Pacific Northwest, and a lot of dealers are, we're friendly with, and they're pretty open to that sort of thing. Obviously, not always a success there. Some guys don't even open the door, but that's what we exist to do, and that's the best way to do it. We're not just out here to hawk wares and, hey, I got this thing, and, listen
Yeah,
to the sales pitch. It's definitely about helping.
I think again, coming from the integrator side of things, coming as from my time as working with a vendor, approaching this in that service first kind of mode and model is the right approach for everybody. Because you don't need me wasting your time shoving a bunch of stuff in your face that you don't want to see. Is it appropriate for your business and damages our relationship? Like there's just like a trifecta of like, I'm not there for that. I'm not here for any of those things.
Because that's the
You
last time
know,
you're going to let me in your door, you know?
right? Exactly. And again, I'm a fan of the adage. I'm not here to mortgage a professional relationship on a single deal or a single product. Just that's not. And I would say that's my own personal brand. I can't speak for all of our marketing on that respect, but I think I can speak for Bob in that relationships are the key to what makes this business operate, and whatever it takes to maintain those relationships is what we should be focused on, not only as integrators, but as manufacturers, reps, and as vendors, coming up with products that are appropriate for the applications that we're trying to sell into. Whether it's big projectors, whether it's video walls, whether it's hi-fi, lighting control, invisible speakers, you name it. We want to make sure that the stuff that we've got in our pocket is the stuff that you want to pull out and dazzle your clients with.
Yep.
So,
And in both of our cases, I mean, it's coming from a place of experience, right? Like we haven't both been manufacturer guys for years and years and years. I mean, Jason's sort of, but I'm kind of fresh out of the install world, and we've been there. Like I know what it's like to be in the shit. I'm not gonna steer you wrong, because I'm gonna feel terrible about it if I do.
yeah. And I think that comes down to the line selection too, right? The line card, I think, reflects obviously what's out there, but also what's appropriate. So I was thinking too about our conversation before, about how it ties into service and where the value is and what these things do. Obviously, a rep firm or your sales rep should be able to, regardless of who they represent, should be able to connect you with a vendor, should be able to connect you with program price sheets, of course, obviously any kind of conversation. But outside of that, there are other layers to the game. There are buying groups, there are entities, whether it's flooring, there's ways to finance your business, there's ways to put product on your floor, all of that stuff. And I think sales reps by and large should also be able to help you navigate what some of that water looks like. And not that every sales rep is going to have deep relationships with buying groups, because obviously there's maybe not always the happiest marriage between those two worlds. I think in for professional reasons, as above and beyond all things, right? It's like just kind of a weird position, but for
Almost
those
parallel
two,
tracks, but not quite.
yeah, exactly, parallel tracks. But I think pointing at what a ProSource or an HTSA or Oasis offers different integrators in terms of a return on the money that they spend on product, also has some also has some unique value and some unique interest. So what you're getting out of those things. And I think for any vendor out there, for any dealer out there, that would be maybe susceptible to the overtures from one of these groups, some of the things that you should be looking at. And again, this is just my personal advice. Take a look at what the buying group members, what the membership looks like. What's the profile of the people that are in this group? Do they match what your profile is? Are they aligned with, hey, these guys do a lot of high-end integration. These are specialized AV retailers. These are legacy businesses that have been in the game for a long, long time. And I'm not going to be specific about which one is who. I'll let everybody else figure out who that's going to be. But you've also got a group that caters as much to high-end integration out there as they cater to white goods, as they cater to the sort of big box retail, more or less, profile of business, right? Like maybe you walk in and they've got washers and dryers over here, and they've got an outdoor set over there, and they've got electronics in the back, or in the front, right? They've got all things under the sun. So
and it's different needs, and exactly what you said. Like you're kind of looking to see a mirror of yourself, right? Like that's the group that's going to serve you the best. And it seems like there's a bunch of different buying groups right now. across the spectrum, and a lot of different groups that do this sort of thing. That's probably why they're growing so fast, is because there's a pretty broad spectrum, right? Where wherever you sit on that, on that map, and whatever your business profile is, there's pretty much a group for you. And same thing with the lines that those buying groups recommend, right? Like you definitely have a pretty good cross section of the industry, depending on what buying group you're talking about and what your dealer target is. And I think it's a good thing. It seems like pretty much across the board, these buying groups, they all have conferences, they all have networking setups, they all provide definitely some value for their members to get together and just share knowledge and
That's just it.
kind of help.
That's just it. I think across the board, just like it's a great time to be a consumer in electronics right now because there's a lot of really great electronics out there. I think it's a great time to be a dealer, be an integrator, and be in the position to be able to look at what the advantages of a buying group can offer you. Again, it's a lot more than just a check at the end of the year for paying you back for the things that you're already buying, but kind of at the base level, it's a check at the end of the year for paying you back for all of the business that you're already doing.
Yeah, and
And
if it offsets your membership fee,
and if it
it's like
offsets your
shopping at
membership,
Costco.
you get some promotions out of it. Maybe you get some other leverage to brands, and you get access to things that maybe you wouldn't have access to normally. Those are all levers that are key and part and parcel to buying group membership, and certainly something that to anybody out there that's considering that. I take it from somebody who's dealt with all of them at a granular level, whether that's directly or just on the periphery, but observing all the moving parts and pieces. Um, they all offer different pros and cons. They all have different lines, and whether or not they're aligned with your business, I think kind of comes down to your individual profile. But I think there's a strong case to be made for there being an ROI associated with that. If you aren't getting, I could say this: if you aren't getting a value out of your buying group membership, chances are it starts with the person that just joined the membership, or that's just joined the buying group that's not getting a lot out of it because
Right.
I've seen them go so hard and so over the top with you know, welcoming and onboarding and getting you networked in with their team and the other networks maybe in your area, et cetera, or excuse me, other dealers in your area where you're aligned, et cetera.
Right.
Again, I think it may have something to do with your engagement level, what you're getting out of that relationship.
Well, and speaking of buying groups and what they do, I mean, one of the biggest events that's kind of become a big event was started by a buying group, right? So Lightapalooza, everybody knows what that is now. It's no big secret. I forget what year they're in. I think they're third or fourth year. But this was stood up by HDSA because somebody recognized that there was a need for residential integrators to get a little bit more in depth on lighting in residential projects. And this is right at the inset of trying to get fixtures into integrators' hands and get these guys doing it. But it was great, and now it's really just blossomed into this huge thing. And I mean, it's coming up, February 26th through 29th in Phoenix. Definitely not to. We have our lines there. We're all going to be there. It's going to be a great time. But just the educational opportunities and the opportunities to kind of meet these lighting vendors. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I think having just traveled with our strip lighting vendor du jour, we've got we've got our good friends at Elemental LED and also Slash Lucetta. So I traveled with Keith Zieber
Keith's the
last
man.
week.
Just the
He's
man.
so great. We had a really great trip. I know we've got a plan to have him on the show here, but to think about how far away from TVs and speakers that you can get in this business and still have people knocking on your door. At least I'm an old dog, so I always think about things as like these specialized businesses that you'd have where you'd have the TV guy or you'd have the stereo guy, and maybe they were partnered up or something like that. But you kind of had these, all these unique little businesses that you go to. Now the specialization is so
Sure.
widespread and there's so much concentrated, and there's just more and more opportunities for dealers to go, oh yeah, you want to do lighted up toe kick here in your bathroom? Yeah, it has nothing to do with your electrician, has nothing to do with your plumber.
Right.
It's something that I can order these parts that's custom made for your space. And yeah, when you walk in the bathroom, doesn't require a control system, doesn't require
Right.
anything. All it requires is for me to be able to plug this joker in and watch this. When you walk in, day or night doesn't matter. As soon as you walk in, the toe kick will come on and stay on for
Yep.
15 or 20 minutes while you're in the bathroom. Or if you want to tie it into this control system I just sold you,
Sure.
wonderful,
And
right?
it's part of an overall positive trend where technology is becoming ingrained in more aspects and facets of these homes where, you know, strip lighting wasn't really too much of a thing, outside of the super high end. And now it's really coming down. And one of the things that we're noticing here is, now it makes perfect sense for your low voltage installer to be putting up your motorized window treatments and your strip lights, because it's technology related. It's all kind of underneath the same umbrella, and it's good that more people are seeing it that way, because that's going to get you your best experience. Is the guy who is just your technology guru wrapping his head around this stuff and being able to provide that stuff. It's going to give your homeowner such a better experience. And I think GCs and builders are starting to get that.
Yeah, I agree. Just more awareness, more outreach, more people thinking about, oh, these are cool things, and you being the integration partner, being like, just being able to say yes,
Yep.
as having those tools to get there. So me personally, I'm excited to go to Arizona here at the end of February to get out of the Pacific Northwest and maybe see some cacti, maybe have some fantastic Tex-Mex. I don't know what they. I don't know. It's not AZ Mex,
It's
and it's a
with
different
how
thing
Phoenix,
though.
the demographic in Phoenix is, it's really, there's a lot of Golden Corral. There's a lot of early bird stuff.
Oh, I'm aware. Yeah, I get that. There's a lot of soft food. I
Yeah,
understand.
soft foods, cups of pills, that sort of thing. Um,
Did that just release the demon out?
no,
when you
I have
heard
nothing against Arizona. No,
when you heard when
me
you
and
heard
Arizona are
soft
great.
food, it was like soft food. That was cool. I like that.
I'm a big fan of soft food. Let's
Okay,
just we'll
that's
put it
fair.
there,
I
right?
like it. I like it.
But no, it's going to be such a great event, and it's totally worth going to. One of the other things that we kind of got the heads up on a little bit, and it's coming up a lot sooner than that, is the Sony Pro Roadshow, and that's right in my backyard here in San Diego. And we talked a little bit about it, but we'll touch on it again. It's the time is coming. You gotta you gotta get
Yeah,
registered
well,
for this thing.
you and I will both be there, I believe. We'll be shooting a little bit of video. We'll be
Yeah,
shaking hands. We'll be talking to Sony ambassadors. We'll be talking to powers that be, trying to get a little FaceTime, get a little bit of video time, and talk about what that engagement looks like.
yeah,
I think
absolutely.
I think Sony Pro is a big opportunity for the CI space, not only for high performance mini LED monitors and all the good things that Sony has to offer from the video side,
Yep.
but also CCTV and some of the other CLED products like big video wall products, etc.,
Yeah,
are all super. Let's just face it, super badass, and things that are aspirational, and a good avenue for clients to hear about. You don't know what a client's going to say yes to unless you can say confidently, "Oh, hey, by the way, did you know that I could sell you this, or did you know that
yep.
this was an option?"
Did you
Um,
know that this exists? Like half of the
did you,
time, that's the thing, is
right.
how do you don't know that this stuff's out.
We just had that conversation with a company that builds yachts up here. They're kind of blown away by some of the offerings that are available to them through the Sony Pro space,
Yeah,
and it's just like, oh, did you know that? Yes, we could do a 4K broadcast quality CCTV system on your several several tens of billions of dollar thing that sits in the water.
Certainly.
We would love to be able to provide those things for you. And oh yeah, they're marine rated and all that other good stuff. So
I'll tell you, the yacht world is its own. I'm so glad that exists. Really,
wow,
having had the opportunity to work on quite a few
there's
yachts, like the fact that this is the playground, this is where you can put all of that cool stuff that maybe the wife said no to
there's
in
different
the land
yeah
house.
there's different tiers to like to wealth. That people would tell me, like, oh, they've got horse money. Horse money is respectable, right?
Right,
You
right,
got jet money. Okay,
sure, yep.
jet money is real, but
Another tier,
you got like yacht money, like real yacht money is,
right.
that's another snack
Well,
bracket,
then
altogether. And
there's certain
sometimes those
qualifiers
things,
at that level too, right? So
right? And
there's
sometimes they're
yacht
like,
money, but then there's yacht with full size tender money, and then there's
right,
yacht with helicopter, and then yacht with two helicopters, and that's
yeah.
it's amazing. The scale just keeps on going.
Sometimes there's yacht next to horse money with helicopter on that flies between them. Who knows, right?
Where yeah, where does that go? Are there any yachts that have like stables, so like you can take your horses with you to accompany you at sea? Like how would a horse even do on a yacht?
that sounds like the old Passage to the Old World or something like that, man. Like you
Well,
sound
I mean, obviously horses came over on boats, right? Sure, but that's a long time ago.
I don't think, I'm just gonna go out on a limb here. I don't think they've added like horse turf to the ocean anywhere, so I don't think it's gonna be very dissimilar in a lot of ways.
I
I,
mean,
I think you're putting a horse on an airplane. I think horses going private jet or DHL or
you think
whatever you
okay?
do.
You think horses flying a jet? I would say there's a lot of horse trailers here. We're kind of an equestrian area.
I'm aware,
You know,
but I'm just saying overseas horse. Like, I mean, would you put a horse on a submarine? I don't think so. It's got to go boat,
I
but
mean,
that's a long time for a horse to be on a boat.
that's what I mean. Like, what do what do you even do? And to
I'm,
get
I'm thinking,
exercise, like, are
I
you
think you put a
riding the horse on the
stamp.
boat?
I think you put a stamp on their bum and you just fly them,
Just FedEx.
FedEx
Just
them
poke some
off.
holes.
No, you just
Insert
put a
carrot
label.
every 500
Yeah,
miles.
just put a label on their haunch and just boop, and then they scan them and off they go. It'll be a good time.
Elmer's. Oh wait, no, sorry, that's
Yeah,
after. That's after FedEx loses
yeah,
your horse package. Right.
exactly. All right. Well, we've gone fully off the rails at this point. It's
It's
the
been a
end of
long
the
day,
evening.
Jason. It's been a
It
long
has
day.
been. We have to chop this podcast up and move it after we're done with it. But
Yeah,
if it does
it's
make the cut, I think what we shared here with you guys is, as obviously there's a little bit of humor at the end of the day for us, but by and large, there's some value here. I feel like the buying group situation. If you have questions about it, reach out, talk to some of your local reps, talk to some of the other dealers that you know in the area, see where their bread's buttered at, see where you think like, hey,
yeah,
like maybe there is some value here for me. And in terms of your rep relationships, whoever you're doing business with, and we know that you're doing you're doing business with every other rep in the territory because they
sure,
have products that maybe we don't, or vice versa. But if if you're not getting the most out of that relationship, find out what it is that you feel like identify what it is you need to have that's better. Is it more communication? Is it less communication?
right.
And,
Check that box.
what's the right cadence? And I think it's okay to express where you're coming from. I know I've had lots of dealers tell me like, hey, I'll raise my hand if I've got an issue, but otherwise, you
Sure.
know, thanks. But I've had lots of other guys that are like, you didn't call me last week. What's wrong?
Yeah.
Are we not friends anymore? So, I'm not gonna specify exactly who that was. Well, I
Not on this
love, I
episode, at
love,
least. You'll have to
and
keep
not on this
listening.
episode,
Right.
and I love them all. But suffice it to say, we hope you got some value out of this episode. Maybe got a couple of chuckles out of it. We hope to see you down in San Diego at the Sony Pro Roadshow, and also in Arizona at the Lightapalooza show there. So for myself, Mr. Jason Savage, and my partner, Mr. Chris Barlow, thank you very much for joining us. Take care, and thank you for joining us on Inside Integration.
Have a great week.